Oh, excuse me. Everybody ready?
I want to sit down.
3, 2, 1. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday night Bible study class. Tonight we're going to be talking about Psalm 78. And as long as that psalm is, we'll probably be talking about that for 2 or 3 weeks. But before we get started, I want to just mention a couple of things. Has your group run out of a place to meet? Do you need a place to meet? Go to Harvard Park Baptist Church if you're in or around the Springfield area, and give them a call before you come, 947-252-2565. Leave your information, and they'll give you a call back. They got a beautiful center here for you to meet. They got a nice large kitchen downstairs, dining room. It's a great place if you, if you got like a little group, like a a self-help group or scouts or Bible study or a little church getting started. If you're looking for a place to meet, this is it. I'm pretty sure they're not going to ask for any money, but a little something in the bowl on Sunday would be a good thing. They're just a little church and they're trying to help the community. So give them a call, and if you've got that pin, 947-252-2565. You won't be sorry. Also, a friend of mine who is a licensed teacher here in the state of Illinois is starting a tutoring business. Well, actually, it's been going for a while now.
Yes.
And if you have kids or grandkids that is in kindergarten through 4th grade, give them a call. She's very good. It's called World Span Tutoring Service. Now, if you got that pen, I want to give you something here. And the tutoring is in reading and math. Contact Mickey Shell. Mickey Shell. Call or text 217-761-5535. 217-761-5535. Now, if you didn't get the numbers, don't worry about it. You can always find our Facebook Live on my page, and hit stop, start. You'll get it. Okay, so tonight, like I said, we're going to be talking. Hi, Dennis. We're going to be talking about Psalm 78. I forgot to get my glasses ready. Now, Psalm 78, like I said, is a very, very long psalm. Now, a lot of times, and in fact, I think I just said this last week, I always say, when you're talking, especially in the Old Testament, whenever God talks to his people, he usually starts by reciting the things that he's done for the Jews. I brought you into Egypt, I got you out of Egypt, I dealt with your enemies, I protected you in the desert, blah, blah, blah. And he does that not because the Jews are stupid, but because he wants them to remember. Now remember, they weren't writing, they're in the desert, so they're not writing. So history and prayers and the scriptures are passed down verbally. Okay? But what writing there is done by hand, so the material is not widely done. So it is still done at this point verbally. So God is telling them each time he recites what he's doing so they remember. This psalm is going to, now this is the psalmist, Asaph is his name, and he's the choir director and contemporary of King David. And he's going to go through this long psalm And he's going to recite a lot of the stuff that God has done for his people. And we'll recognize it. There was one thing that when I went through and read it, there was one thing that I noticed that he left out. And I'm not surprised he left it out, but I am a little bit. He talks about when God brings the people of Israel into the land of milk and honey. What he doesn't mention is the first time God takes them to the land of milk and honey, and they sin, and that's when they go back in the desert for 40 years. He leaves that part out. But other than that, it's pretty accurate. Well, it's scripture. It's 100% accurate. And the overriding message I want everybody to get out of this psalm is God's kindness to the rebellious Jews. And I'm gonna hit that hard as we go through, because God is the same today. I mean, let me give you an example. I'm sorry, my sinuses are acting up, so you on Facebook, I apologize. In this country, since 1973, we have killed over 60 million American babies through abortion. Last year we killed 336 plus thousand American babies in 1 year. That is a city the size of the capital of Illinois times 3 every year, counting man, woman, and child. 3 times the size of the city of Springfield is killed every year through legalized abortion. Now, do you think God's happy about that? I can't imagine he's happy about it, and yet, well, which would explain a lot of the governors. But anyway. But anyway, we are still blessed. He hasn't sent us into captivity. He hasn't condemned our land. And yet, and it amazes me that the same people that are doing this have the gall, the unmitigated gall, to invoke God's name in prayer. I heard, well, that's getting political. I don't want to go down that road. But, so God is a forgiving God, and we're going to see this as we go through. There's going to be some points where you're going to say, okay, now that doesn't sound very forgiving to me. But I want you to, when we come to those points, I want you to ask yourself this question. We sacrifice our babies in this country on the altar of fill in the blank. It could be money, it could be convenience, it could be time, it could be age. Everybody has their own altar. The fact of the matter is the baby is still sacrificed on that altar. Okay? I was listening to the radio show today, and I actually heard somebody call in and say, I couldn't believe they were talking about conservatives and their beliefs. And the guy went down a checklist, and he was right on every one of them. A caller called in and said, I don't believe that every Christian has to check off, or every conservative has to check off every box, and he used abortion as an example. He said, I believe you can be a conservative Christian and still believe in abortion because there are exceptions, like rape, incest. Okay, first off, if you talk to experts, they will tell you that the numbers of that happening is infinitesimal. To make that an issue that's an excuse. I mean, if I were a female and I wanted to get an abortion, all I go in and tell the abortionist I got raped. I mean, so that to me is a non-starter, non-issue. And then another guy called in and said, excuse me, but our Constitution says it's against the law and The Bible says it's against the law to kill another human being. With the technology the way it is today, I don't think it's even open for debate that a baby is a human being. I agree. So at what point, then, you see what I'm saying? So when we go through this psalm and we see that God is a forgiving God, I want you to remember the example of abortion. Now, that came around in 1973. Okay? 83, 93, 03, 13. That's been 46 years ago. 46 years ago, abortions became legal. Huh?
Was it Roe versus Wade?
Right. So 46 years ago, abortion became legal in this country, and God continues to bless this country. Now, have we gone steadily downhill since then? Socially, absolutely we have. And I think God is going to make us pay a long, slow price. But still, we have not been taken over. We've been invaded, but we have not been taken over. But I think we're getting wake-up calls. And I want you to think about that example as we go through here. Because a lot of times when we read the Old Testament and the Jews do something that we think is stupid, you know, like how could you be so stupid? Well, okay, God could ask us the same question about abortion. I gave you the technology, I gave you the know-how, I gave you 50 years, and you're still killing my kids. At what point am I supposed to say, okay, enough is enough? So remember that as we go through this. Okay. Verse 1. Give ear, O my people, to my law, incline your ears to the words of my mouth. Now this is interesting. This is God speaking. Give ear, O my people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which you have heard and known. Notice he doesn't say read and known. Remember I told you that it's passed down verbally. That you have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from our children, from their children, telling to the generation to come the praises of the Lord, and his strength and his wonderful works that he has done. Okay, so right here the psalmist has set this up. And he's told you exactly what he's going to do. He's going to go through and he's going to tell you all the good stuff that God's done, that has been passed down since it happened, from generation to generation. And the purpose of it is to show his strength and his wonderful works that he has done. Verse 5. For he established a testimony in Jacob. Okay, what does that mean? He established a testimony in Jacob. Now remember, Jacob is the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. He had 12 boys, remember? Mm-hmm. And Jacob is the one that he made the promise of the law to. Okay? It said, and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers, that they should make them known to their children. So God said, I'm going to make a promise to Jacob. I want you to tell your kids, the 12 tribes of Israel. I want it passed down, and I want it carried on. And then just to give you an example, I had this pointed out to me one time. I knew this to be true, but until it was pointed out, hi Lori, it never made sense to me. Did you ever wonder, in the Garden of Eden, when Cain and Abel brought their sacrifices to God? Okay, that's when Cain killed Abel, right? Did you ever wonder how they knew to sacrifice to God?
God had to tell him.
He told somebody,
Right.
but the Bible doesn't tell you that. But yet, Adam and Eve obviously knew,
Right. So he passed
so
it
which
down.
means Cain and Abel knew, and God told them the deficiency of Cain's
Sacrifice.
sacrifice, and
Was
so
grain.
they knew
That was grain, correct?
he was the one that took vegetables, yes.
Yeah, grain.
So they knew what was acceptable and what wasn't. So God obviously had instructed them on what the sacrifice was from the beginning. The sin hasn't been committed yet, and yet they knew the sacrifice. So I always found that interesting. If sin hadn't happened yet, they committed murder. And here's another thing that'll blow your mind. If God doesn't tell you that killing somebody is sin, is it sin? We didn't know that murder was sin until the Ten Commandments. And that was after the Jews left Israel, or left Egypt. So in the Garden of Eden, they didn't know that was sin.
He knew it was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
When he killed his brother, he knew it was wrong because he said, "I'll have a mark and everybody would know who I am." And God told him.
But no, God told him he was going to give him the mark. And that's when Cain said, well, if everybody sees the
Right.
mark, then they'll know.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But he knew it was wrong.
But after God told him, the ground, remember God said the ground speaks out. You have shed innocent
With his
blood. Okay?
But he
But-
lied and he was deceitful.
Well, that's all true. But you're using our knowledge in his situation. He did not know that murder was sin. He might have known it was wrong. I'll give you that. But he didn't know what the punishment was. He didn't know that he was going to have a mark and be cast out from the
Oh
Garden
no,
of Eden.
he didn't know that, but he knew it was wrong.
So, but my point is
Okay.
that God always finds a way to let you know what he wants from you. Whether somebody tells you and then it's handed down or it's put in writing.
Through the
And
Holy
that's-
Spirit.
Right. And so right off the chute we see that he's going to give a testimony, which is going to be the law. And he gave it started with Jacob, made the testimony, and he's told to tell generation after generation so that everybody gets the law. There's no excuses. That the generation to come might know them. Remember I said last week that Christianity is one generation away from extinction. God is addressing that. The children who would be born, that aren't killed by abortion, by the way, that they may arise and declare them to their children, that they may set their hope in God and not forget the words of God, but keep his commandments. God hasn't given his commandments yet. When God gave the law to Jacob, okay, they were still in Egypt. It's after they leave Egypt that God gives the Ten Commandments to Moses. And may not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that did not set his heart aright. What does that mean to you, a stubborn and rebellious generation?
Sin. Not
Okay,
listening. Stiff-necked.
okay. But what does that look like?
The millennium kids. I don't know.
Stubborn is if you're told over and over and over and you still do the same thing.
Yes.
A rebellious generation is when you do the same thing over and over again and let God know about it. So now you're not just being stubborn, now you're being rebellious. Stubborn is, go clean your room. No. Go clean your room. No. Go clean your room. No. That's stubborn. Rebellious is, go clean your room. No, I'm going out to play. Goodbye. See the difference? And so that would be a generation that did not set its heart aright. And whose spirit was not faithful to God. The children of Ephraim, being armed and carrying bows, turned back in the day of battle. They did not keep the covenant of God. They refused to walk in his law and forgot his works and his wonders that he had shown them. See, that's why he repeats it over and over and over. Now those 3 verses right there explain exactly why God does that. The children of Israel, they were armed, they were carrying bows. They turned back in the day of battle. God told them to go to battle and they didn't fight, they turned and ran. They did not keep the covenant of God. They refused to walk in his law and forgot his works and his wonders that he had shown them. Remember I told you a week or 2 ago that everybody should be keeping 2 journals. One is a prayer journal and one is a spiritual journey journal. And the reason you do that, the spiritual journey, is so that you don't forget the wonders that he shows you. If you're paying attention and you're doing the things you should be doing, you should be walking from miracle to miracle on a daily basis.
Like that. Walking from miracle to miracle.
So, if you record those and you remember those, then when the times get tough and the spiritual battle is tough, you can say, but he did this and he did this and he did this. Surely he can do this.
Amen.
Okay?
That's right.
Marvelous things he did in the sight of their fathers, in the land of Egypt, in the field of Zoan. He divided the sea and caused them to pass through. Do we know what he's talking about there?
The Red Sea.
Yep. And he made the water stand up like a heap.
The Bible.
You know, not only, and here's something that the Bible doesn't say, but you have to think about. If you go to a mud puddle and you take all the water out, you have mud. If you take a sea away, you have mud. Really deep, thick mud. So God not only separated the water, he dried the land, because 1 million and some Jews walked across it, and then the Egyptians were taking horses and buggies along the bottom of it.
And they would be dragging
Right.
them through, muck and mire.
In the daytime also he led them with the cloud, and all the night with the light of fire. You remember that?
Israel.
Yep.
That night led them with the...
And that was one of the ways that he hid the Jews from the Egyptians. He used the cloud during the day so they couldn't see him, and the fire on one side and darkness on the other side so they couldn't see where the Jews were. He split the rocks in the wilderness and gave them drink in abundance like the depths. Do you remember that when they were in the desert? And Moses would walk up and tap the rock and water would flow out? You think about how much water 1 million people can drink. And it says it gave them drink in abundance. He also brought streams out of the rock, which we just talked about, and caused waters to run down like rivers. Now those are miracles, right?
Yes, yes. Yes.
without a question. And verse 17 says, but they sinned even more against him. Remember the abortion? By rebelling against the Most High in the wilderness. Now, right after they crossed, and right after they crossed, Moses' sister
Miriam.
does a fancy dance and all of that. And the next day, is it that time already? Okay, just hit that one button, the red one.